The vast Montana plains were buried in a blanket of freshly fallen snow, muffling the world in an eerie hush. The wind, cold and relentless, whipped across the barren landscape, carrying with it the scent of winter's icy grip. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky blazed with hues of crimson and violet in a final defiant display of color before surrendering to the encroaching darkness. In the heart of this desolate beauty stood a lone figure, a young woman named Eliza. She huddled deeper into her tattered shawl, seeking solace from the biting cold. Her dress, once a symbol of gentility, was now torn and soiled, a testament to her desperate journey. Her lips were blue from the cold, and her eyes, usually sparkling with life, were clouded with misery, reflecting the turmoil within. Behind her, a forest of gnarled trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow, their shadows dancing ominously in the fading light. Up ahead, silhouetted against the darkening sky, stood a weathered wooden signpost pointing towards two destinations, one marked despair, the other hope. Which path would Eliza choose? Would she embrace the despair that threatened to consume her? Or would she dare to seek the glimmer of hope that beckoned in the distance? Driven by desperation, she decided to take her chances and headed towards the signpost. As she walked, the wind seemed to whisper tales of hardship and heartbreak, amplifying her sense of loneliness. Each step took her further into the heart of the unknown, where the line between reality and nightmare was perilously thin. As night fell, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of menacing shadows. The wind grew louder, mimicking the frantic beating of Eliza's heart. She quickened her pace, driven by a primal fear that gnawed at her insides. The crunch of her footsteps on the frozen ground echoed through the stillness, sounding like footsteps of someone pursuing her. Suddenly, the trees thinned, revealing a clearing. And in the center stood a small, dilapidated building. Its windows, like vacant eyes, stared back at her, offering no warmth or welcome. This was the last vestige of civilization along this forsaken road. Beyond this point, the rules of society ceased to exist, and only the harsh laws of nature prevailed. The question was, did she dare venture beyond? With a deep breath, Eliza steeled herself and stepped into the desolate wasteland beyond the clearing. The darkness enveloped her, pressing in from all sides like a suffocating blanket. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but she fought against it, driven by a flicker of hope that refused to be extinguished. She had walked for what seemed like hours when she began to notice strange shapes emerging from the darkness. At first, she thought they were figments of her imagination, mere tricks of the light and shadows. But as she drew closer, she realized with growing horror that they were, in fact, human skulls. They lay scattered on the ground, grinning back at her with their empty sockets, silent witnesses to countless tragedies. The realization sent a chill down her spine. This was no ordinary wasteland. It was a graveyard of dreams, a place where hope came to die. With each step, the skulls grew more numerous, forming a macabre path that led deeper into the gloom. Panic clawed at Eliza's throat, threatening to choke her. Was this her fate, to join the silent majority in this desolate realm? Or would she find a way to break free from its clutches? Through blurry vision, she spotted a small structure looming in the distance. With renewed determination, she stumbled forward, praying it would offer her shelter from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. As she drew closer, the structure became clearer. It was a small shack, its walls made of rough-hewn logs, its roof caved in on one side. Smoke curled from a hole in the wall, hinting at the possibility of warmth and companionship. Hope, fragile as it was, flickered within her once more. Perhaps she wasn't destined to spend the night in the company of the dead. Nearing the shack, she heard voices, gruff and raspy. Their words were indistinguishable, but their tone made it clear they weren't offering greetings. These were men who knew the darkness of the world intimately, and she, with her innocence and naivety, was an intruder in their domain. She hesitated, torn between the safety she hoped to find within the shack and the uncertainty of what lay beyond. As she stood there, debating her next move, a figure emerged from the shack, his silhouette framed by the dim light spilling from the doorway. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. The men inside noticed her and turned their gazes upon her. The newcomer stepped forward, his eyes boring into hers with an intensity that made her uneasy. "What do you want?" His voice was like gravel grinding on stone, each word carefully measured, each syllable a threat. His gaze was unsettling, as though he could see right through her, stripping away all pretense, leaving her bare and exposed. Eliza stammered, trying to find the right words, but fear choked her voice. Before she could respond, another man from inside the shack let out a harsh laugh, echoing through the clearing like a cackle of pure malice. "Looks like we got ourselves a lost lamb, boys," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Come on, Mac, don't be a spoilsport. Let's give the little bird a proper welcome to our humble abode." As the other men laughed, their words like shards of glass piercing her ears, Eliza felt a surge of panic. She had stumbled into a den of wolves, and they were circling their prey. Seeing her distress, Max stepped forward, interrupting the men's gleeful taunts. "Enough," he commanded, his voice booming and leaving no room for argument. The men fell silent, their gazes flickering between Mac and Eliza, unsure of their leader's intentions. "Why are you here?" Mac asked, his voice softer now, yet no less commanding. Eliza hesitated, her mind racing, searching for an answer that wouldn't brand her as foolish. I was just passing through," she finally managed, hoping her composure betrayed nothing of the terror that gripped her heart. Max studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "This ain't a road, lass," he said finally, his voice betraying nothing of the thoughts that whirled behind his eyes. "How did you get here?" She told them about walking from the nearest town, her voice trembling slightly as she recounted her tale. They listened, their expressions unreadable, until she finished. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackling fire, as Mac considered what she had said. Finally, he nodded curtly. "Come with us," he said. "We'll see if we can find someplace safer for you." She looked at the men, their faces etched with the hardships of a life lived on the fringes. She saw kindness in their eyes, a camaraderie forged in the fires of adversity. Trusting that they meant her no harm, she agreed. As the men prepared to leave, Mac turned back to the shack, reaching for a lantern hanging by the door. "We got ourselves a long walk," he said to Eliza, gesturing for her to lead the way. As they set off into the gloom, the lantern casting long dancing shadows around them, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that she had traded one danger for another. The men were clearly wary, keeping close together and watching her movements with keen awareness. What awaited her at the end of this perilous journey? Would she find sanctuary, or was she merely trading one prison for another?